Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up? Yeah, I was just wiping to a world boss.
Oh boy, yeah, in that dungeon?
Oh yeah, so stupid, dude. I pulled extra mobs because I'm a dumbass. It was great.
How is it, dude? I've been seeing you playing this game like non-stop.
Yeah, I've got, I think in Alpha 2 Phase 1, I had about 400 hours, and I think in Phase 2, I'm over 100 hours now. So
wow.
I've just been having a blast in it. And I think the thing is I got back into hardcore classic World of Warcraft recently because I'm doing the OnlyFans stuff. And it really kind of got me into that mood of like, I want to play a game where you don't level to 60 instantly, where you don't get max level immediately, where you don't get everything handed to you. And I got into this and I was like, okay, it's going to be an alpha. It's probably going to suck. And the first like 2 weeks, it was a mess, man. Like, because it's an alpha. Like,
well,
it's
you
going to be that.
remember I tried to log on. That was a bad day, man.
Oh, yeah. No, it's wild. But like, the thing that got me was like, I was like, okay, I got my key back in 2021, like a while ago. Yeah. And I've been waiting for this, and they finally brought this thing out.
So you played the first alpha too, right?
I actually didn't end up playing the first alpha because I got an alpha 2 key back then.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't end up getting to play the first alpha. And like, I got into it and I was like, okay, this is really rough. I'm a bit worried. And within a month, everything in the game had changed. Yeah. They'd fixed all the server performance issues. Like the game was actually playable. And we stopped worrying about like, is the game playable? And started worrying about strategizing,
like playing the game
to compete with other players. Yeah. And I was like, this is really good. And then once phase 2 started, we were like, okay, let's get into phase 2. I wonder what they've added. And they expanded the map into the desert. And those 3 new nodes are there. And everybody got wiped. But the economic changes have been pretty massive because you have 3 whole new zones. You've got like 30% more of a map, right?
Okay, yeah.
So like it's been fun and interesting.
Like
and they added this
spread,
dungeon,
etc.
Yeah. And they started adding these dungeons too. Like we've got that dungeon that he showed you. And then we've got like more Tower of Carfin now and Grave Peak. So there's 3 like major endgame areas right now that are hard. They're like 16-man open world dungeons. Is what you have to do.
So you need to bring in 16 people to even make it happen.
Yeah, if you do it with 8, it's possible, but the bosses they're going to beat you.
Do they scale?
Especially the final one. They don't scale. No, they're just really hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's no scaling or anything like that, but if you're over leveling over the monsters, they don't drop loot. So like it's not going to allow max level players to come back and just like farm that boss so you never get into it. Yeah. Like it is good for the time that it's good.
So what did you think about, like, obviously I'm sure a lot of people had, were bringing up Narc's video and like this whole discourse of like what's going on, and I'm really curious like what your take on all of it is. Because like, I mean, you have way more experience than I do with like development and like software development especially, right? And so like, how do you feel like the way that Narc approached Ash is like, how much of that do you think is like accurate, is like a fan, or like kind of like where are you coming from with that?
I think the biggest thing is it looks like he felt like he got burned pretty early on and has been upset for a while, and that's kind of snowballed, right? Yeah. If that makes sense. But this video didn't make a lot of sense to me as a player because I've been following all the communication. I've been seeing all the things they're doing and seeing the throughput that they have for these updates. Yeah. And they've been really communicative. Like here, I've sent you the roadmap that they sent out. Like, they're really granular on this thing, man. Like they show all the pictures of what they're going to do. They have breakdowns for all of it, videos for everything they're doing, and they've kept to this. And if they have to push it, which they've done a couple times, they're like, hey guys, we're pushing this. Or like one of the things they did recently is they're like, hey, we're pushing some of the content, but we're making it so the game is 24/7 playable until January 6th. So like all through Christmas break, we had no breaks in server uptime. We've just been playing every day. And like, that's stuff that's just completely unexpected, legitimately. Most of the time when you interact with devs, especially for like AAA or anything like that, you don't get to have a conversation.
Well, you can see why. I think the worst part about it is the fact that like you're totally right, and I think this is the reason why. It's because a lot of them are gun shy because they don't want to come out and have an opinion about something, and then somehow things change, the release doesn't happen when you think it should, and then before you know it, now you're a fucking liar.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is like people get so upset about that, and then the dev has to pull back because they've got investors or some shit, and then they piss off the investors, and then they're afraid to say anything, and then the players think that they're being abandoned or being ignored. But like, we have an opportunity finally to have an MMO where you don't have investors. Like he's bankrolling this shit himself, right? And you get to talk to the dev like he's the game director. You can just be like, I think this sucks, and be like, let's have a talk about that. Exactly. He shows up in the Reddit all the time and like actually responds. Like,
well, you know who else does that is Chris Wilson.
Everyone bitches.
I mean, look at in PoE. Like I know you played a little bit of PoE too, right?
Oh, I love PoE,
it's
dude.
so good, right? And so like, Chris gets in the trenches. He is on Reddit writing diatribes. He's writing manifestos on Reddit, arguing with people. And like, that's real, genuine interaction. And I feel like that's why the game's so good. And so it's so weird to see people that are complaining about that.
Thank you.
And I think that's the thing is like we've asked as players for ages just to have a conversation.
Exactly.
And finally when you have a conversation, they're getting shit on. And I'm like, dude,
it's so
you have to be mad about something that's real, right?
Yeah,
like if you're going to be angry, it's got to be real. It's got to make sense. And like in that video, when he showed off the desert, I was like, I know exactly where that is on the map.
Yeah.
And I actually showed it off on stream. I was like, I know exactly where that is. He did it during phase 2 alpha, but during or alpha 2 phase 1, which is before they added everything to the desert.
Right.
That was a month ago. That's it. Like all of the things that you saw in there, that whole zone, everything, that was added in a month, man.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the only thing too. Like there's tons of stuff they don't even put in the patch notes. Like we went to go farm in this area. Let me actually put the name of this damn place. Darrigal Estates. We went to go farm there, and we had this room that was just like an empty wooden box that we were farming in during phase 1, and it looked like shit. And we went back in there during phase 2. It's like filled with set dressing. There's like mushrooms and stuff all over the walls. Like everything looks incredible, and that's not even in the patch notes. So like every environment got picked up with that. And I remember like when we first walked into Wind and Sea, which is probably the next zone they're going to be unlocking for this, it was flat and green, and now it's like a tropical beachside with like plants and trees and all kinds of stuff.
So like there's things on the patch notes that are being added in. It's not like every single thing that's stated is being added in, or I guess vice versa.
There's things that aren't even in the patch notes that are being added. If you move around, and it sucks because like Narc was a mayor in the game, which means he had a flying mount. He could see all of this.
Yes.
And that video doesn't portray any of it. It shows the opposite. And that was so, to me, that was like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, you know better than that. You know what's going on. You can see it, right?
So what do you think about like, because obviously I think it's been really contentious. A lot of people, at least especially in like YouTube comments, have been really critical about the price tag of the game. And I think that that's where I think a lot of the criticism and the frustration comes from, is that people paid money to play the game.
Thank you.
And the game isn't what they wanted it to be, which is disappointing. I mean, it's understandable, right? I mean, you know, viewers, consumers are going to have the opinions they're going to have. But at the same time, like it's definitely a double-edged sword with charging that much money for a beta, because people are going to have that opinion.
Yeah, I think generally, like, especially as players, we're used to an alpha or a beta that's like a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of days. You'll get this all the time from AAA where they're like, hey, you get early access for 3 days for $100 kind of a shit, right? A
marketing tool.
And most of the people, people that come into my chat have that kind of an opinion. They're like, oh, this is going to be like a couple of days, right? And I was like, no. Like, if you look at the roadmap, that key isn't just alpha. It's alpha 2, which we're on right now, all of beta 1, all of beta 2, a month of game time when it launches. That's the next 1.5 to 2 years on the roadmap. Yeah. So like when we're looking at that, if we try to compare that to other offers, right, inside of MMOs, you've got something like World of Warcraft. It's $15 a month. It's $180 a year. Yeah. And you're doing $110 for 2 years minimum.
So you're looking at it like you're prorating or amortizing the cost of a subscription over the year of content that the beta is going to have, and that's kind of like how you make sense out of it.
For me, that's how I made sense of it as a baseline. And then I got into it being like, okay, this makes sense for me from a purchase perspective, from a consumer perspective. And I got in, and it was more than that, more than what I expected. Because we have things where, like, in the beginning, you could do server performance tests. And the way that you would do that is you just restrict the environment or something like that, make all the players go to that area. The way that they did it is Steven got on, turned into a god, flew around and PvP us while RPing it all out and directing all of the players to attack him through the world while they did performance testing in the background. So you have things like this that are just so much more interesting and engaging for the player base in a way that still gets the objective done. Yeah. And I wouldn't have had that experience had I not jumped in. And that was really interesting to me.
Well, that's one of the best things about alphas and like the early testing periods of games is you have like those weird, like random moments, right? I mean, I remember I had a moment where I was in like the wrong place or a place I wasn't supposed to be in like a WoW alpha, and then a GM came and killed me. And it's like, I always remember that because like those cool moments are, they're totally worth it. They're amazing.
Yeah, I had this moment that was really hilarious. It's like he was actually doing wishes for players, and the way that they do that is like he puts out a riddle in global or something like that, and the first person to solve it, they tell him a wish of what they want to have, and then he adds that to the backlog for the game.
Yeah.
And the one for ours is he teleported me to the top of a tower and he gave me a riddle, and I got to solve it. I actually solved it, thankfully. It was the answer was Vera, which is the name of the world, and I wouldn't have gotten that unless I read the wiki, so I got into the lore and everything.
Okay.
And then he gave me a wish, and I said, I want to add ferrets to the video game. And he said, okay, we're going to do that. And he hands me a mount and then killed me with lightning. And like that was the event. And it was just like, I'm always going to remember that because that shit's hilarious.
Yeah.
Right? And you just have this crazy moment with this. And it was funny because it wasn't just streamers they were doing this with.
Yeah.
It was just random people in the world. They did it a whole bunch of times across the different servers. And I love that, man. And like, I have not seen that since Vanilla WoW.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything like that. That kind of interaction.
I
with
think they're
developers
afraid to, and that's the thing. That's what's so disappointing. It's what you were talking about earlier. It's like developers are gun shy to do stuff like this because people can take it out of context or turn it into something that it's not. But the reality is, I think a lot of people really enjoy and appreciate that kind of stuff because it reminds them of times when gaming wasn't as, I don't want to do like this whole like, counterculture, oh, it was corporate and everything, but it did feel like it was more relaxed. And I feel like it takes us back to a time like that. It's very reminiscent of that.
It is, and that's why I've liked WoW Classic Hardcore so much.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're all out there like role playing our characters, surviving the world, and when you lose someone in Hardcore in WoW, it's devastating, right? You could have a dude with like 15 played days
for those
on a hardcore character
that got auto modded because of your statement on YouTube.
Like, oh God, dude!
I will ban you if you talk shit to my chat again.
That kind of experience is right this mostly because the time it took me to level to go from level 1 to level 25 was about 100 hours.
Jesus,
and that was me optimizing that.
What's the cap
the thing
now?
That was interesting,
is it 25?
It's 25.
Okay,
yeah, it's 25. So like the plan at launch, I guess, is 50, and they were saying that should take months, if not a year, to do it. And it makes sense because most of what I realized was if you are only focusing on your character level, that's like your adventurer level, your power level, right, for fighting monsters, but professions are outside of that. So they're not restricted by your character levels. So one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of is like we have this guy on the server, he just trained up all the things to make mounts, like do animal husbandry and go and hunt out mounts and like build those. And he's like the mount guy on the server. And what he did in phase 1 was he told everyone which towns he was going to be in throughout the day. And he was a traveling mount salesman and just sold them off to people. And it was freaking rad. And he was like level 11, but he was the most sought after player in the game.
Yes, right? Exactly. It's like instead of this is the best thing, I used to love this about Classic WoW, and it was a bit in Burning Crusade too, is that some people instead of being a warrior or a mage, they could be a leatherworker or a blacksmith. I love that so much because it expands the way that you can play the game, and it gives people more options and like progression paths. And yeah, I'm a huge supporter of like long form progression content, or sorry, profession content. 100%.
I'm super into the profession system. I think right now it's like
it's immersion
a hint
player
of what
behavior.
It's going to be. Yeah. Exactly, and that's what you want, man. Like, especially in a social sandbox game, because like I played Eve for 15 years. Like, I'm a huge Eve nerd, right? Yeah. And I came from that kind of world that's brutal as shit. And when I get into this, I see a lot of the failures that Eve had in terms of like area ownership, because there's this thing in Eve called sovereignty. Yeah, you can take a section of the map of the galaxy, and you basically own it as your corporation or alliance, which is like a guild or an alliance of guilds.
Yeah, right? I've got like a rough understanding, but okay, go ahead.
You kill basically everyone that comes in there that's not your guys, right?
Yeah, sure.
In this, you have these things called nodes. They're like towns, and those level up as anyone does anything in that zone of the game. So the town grows with you, and that already is really interesting, but unlike Sov and Eve, you can't exclude a small guild. You can't exclude a solo player. So because everyone lives in that
to the economy, like that's my understanding is the nodes is so you have to make the nodes appealing to other people by having them contribute to the economy and like having taxes be fair, etc.
Exactly. So now I'm the mayor of Halcyon on the Lyneth server, and we dropped the taxes to minimum. We've focused our town on mount production. So we made all the facilities for people to be able to train and craft mounts. And now everybody goes in and they're like, oh, that's where you buy a Porsche. That's where you buy a Ferrari. Yeah. Halcyon. And it's cool because we have to spec into that, and we can't make our town do anything else in another direction, right? Yeah. So we have this like highly specialized system, and it has to rely on every other town's highly specialized systems in order for all of us to progress together. But we also also have wars with each other. We go and fight. You can actually make siege weapons and go destroy other towns. That's the thing that I'm interested most in this phase is the siege weapons coming out.
Oh, that's
I want to see how that works.
Did you see the big fight that they did with like the 250 players thing where they brought out like the trebuchets and like the catapults and like all this stuff? Oh my god, it was amazing. That's why I'm so excited for that.
We did like a caravan thing the other day, and I'm waiting for the servers to be able to handle like super large scale PvP, because right now you get kind of like distance limited vision, right? It's just the render distance is just not very far. But we did about a 200. It's got to be like 150 people in that fight.
Yeah,
and it was fun. Like it was really cool. And like we had some bugs and system problems where it was like we have a caravan and the caravan makes a PvP zone around it, which is cool. And I invited everyone in the server to try and come kill me because we're the dominant force, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of formed up, and our guys formed up, and then they couldn't flag for PvP for the caravan because you have to get close to it. We're like, okay, everyone hold back. They all came up and flagged, and then they went away, and then we actually had a real battle. And it was super fun, man. Like it was cool to do. And everybody was like cheering afterwards. We took photos. It was cool.
Well, that's what MMOs are supposed to be, right? And like you have like that's the emergent player behavior that systems like that are supposed to create happen, or like to like make happen. And if that's the way the game is going to be designed, I think that's what really keeps people engaged in it for a really long period of time. I think that classic WoW is like that. For example, like the Angoro, like the Angoro Crater Mafia, or like the way that people would farm Scarabord, or like all these other types of like emergent player behavior. That's the stuff that like really makes a game like Eve or any sandbox game. That's what keeps it alive, or also that's what kills it if it's not done properly.
I completely agree. And like those types of systems that they add in here, like I'll give you an example. We're fighting in this raid right now. I've got 17 people in the raid. We're about to kill the boss. Near the boss, there's 2 crafting tables. Those crafting tables create items that can only be crafted here. So you need to get a guy that has dedicated himself to metallurgy. And that dude is really hard into metallurgy. Like he is trained for that. You bring him in here, you keep him alive, and then you get him to that so he can start his crafts. And then you have to bring him in to go and get the crafts back out later. And that kind of stuff is really cool. It reminded me of like in Skullomance, where you could go and make flasks inside of Skullomance. Yeah, or BRD, same thing. Like that shit is rad, and I miss that for crafting because it makes a crafter into a utility piece.
It makes the game a world, right? And I feel like people say MMOs are dead now, but like if you think about how many of these shows have you watched? Have you watched like Overlord, Sword Art Online, any of that?
Yeah. I'm a huge weeb, dude.
Of course. Yeah, so I have too. I've watched Log Horizon, every single one of them. It's like, if these shows are so fucking popular, why is it that people can't make a game that follow the paradigms in these shows? And I feel like if you watch these shows, the old original MMO paradigms, like what you're talking about, the BRD, or like going down to the bottom and having like this like maxed out blacksmith that's able to create this insane weapon, like that is all a narrative that people love to see. And it's something that people remember for like 10 or 20 years. So like I feel like these isekai animes are like a really good benchmark of like where people really want to see dynamics and narratives in MMOs go.
I actually have an item on the screen if you want to see this.
I do. I'm watching. Yeah, weaponsmithing, quality experience rating. Yeah.
So these pants only drop in this dungeon. So you need to get these and then extract them back out to bring them to your crafters as well. They have all kinds of crazy items like this, and they can be upgraded with enchantments and all kinds of other stuff that you do. And they're not like they're not easy to get. Like this is, you bring a 16-man in to get a pair of pants for your guild weaponsmith, so you can gain advantage on the server because now you guys are the ones making the thing.
I remember hoping that New World would be this game.
That's exactly. I remember when we first started playing this, and I was like, "Oh man, this is what New World was supposed to be."
Exactly. Yes, and it's like the alpha was like that. That's what it was. They changed it, and you even had the weaponsmithing stuff. It's like I was thinking. I remember there were specific weaponsmithing pants, but it's just it didn't turn out that way. And I feel like again, it's like the. I feel like a lot of games are afraid to tell people no with certain things, and I think that's also that's going to be a huge point of contention with Ashes, and I feel like it's going to be massive. And I don't even believe that, like, now you only have the people that are like extremely invested, right? Literally hundreds of dollars. But like when you bring in those more casual players, I'm expecting to see a huge amount of people that are frustrated about that.
I think it's going to be one of those games where like a lot of people join and many of them fall off because EVE Online, right? You've got a more PvP oriented environment. You've got a difficult game. It's got something that is probably not going to be very interesting for people that don't have like a super long interest in something, like low attention span on stuff, things like that, because it takes time. Like, this isn't, you're not going to reach max level. You can't buy level 60. Like, you have to go and fight this for a long time. Like, getting 25 was a lot, man. Like, that was a huge amount. That was with really good play and optimization too. So like, if you're trying to do that, you're not doing that overnight. That's going to take a while. And even then, like, if we look at my professions on this, I've really just done lumberjacking, carpentry, and
I'm seeing that.
a little bit of lumber milling. The rest of these I haven't even touched.
Yeah,
and
alchemy 0, weaving 0. I can see that. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge amount of investment. And you said you put in a collective total of 500 hours, right?
Total, yeah.
Whoa, that's a lot.
It's about 140 on this playthrough on this character.
Okay, yeah.
And like, it's a shitload. And even then, that's also like, you have to understand too, I have an advantage. I'm a mare, so I have a flying mount.
Like a stream,
the average player isn't going to have that.
100%.
And I've got a guild that can hand me items. This is with the streamer privilege that comes with that, right?
Yeah.
So you've got time invested in this. It's not a get there overnight thing, which, to be real with you, every level that I've gained has felt really good and satisfying because of that, in a way that I haven't felt since Classic WoW.
Well, you know what really also proves this is Path of Exile 2. That game doesn't give you shit. And if you look if you look at the level of retention that it's had, it has been absolutely incredible. Like, it is a level of retention that a live service game almost never has. And I think that it's because it actually does make things take a long time, but it doesn't do so in a, hey, we've decided to arbitrarily make this take longer so we can extend your playtime metrics. And I think this is something that a lot of people want, is like a form of long form content that's not just basically do the exact same thing 400 times.
Yeah, we've made a lot of jokes about it too, of like, it feels like you got Izakai'd when you play this game. It feels like
it is.
You're in there, your reputation matters, like, you're in this world, and the only thing that matters is your word and how people perceive you.
Like Classic WoW.
And we have enemies. Yeah, we have enemies on the server. We've got other rivals that that don't like us. We've got a guild that fights against us all the time. Like, this is a pretty normal thing for us. And like,
reputation
I
matters.
love that, dude. I'm in it for that. In fact, we caused a lot of conflict on the server because the caravan system's fully in. And one of the things about caravans is, you blow up a guy's caravan, he loses that caravan, man. Yeah. So what we do is we blow up caravans and then we sell the parts back to people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Where the guys making
get
them
coming and going,
and they're buying them after we blow them up. You know, like, that's kind of how it works, right? And I actually love that. I think that ends up allowing us to play a role on the server. We could be a villain. That's why our guild is named Actual Pirates. It's not a joke. We are, right? And that kind of stuff is really, really fun, and you can get into the role play of it and actually enjoy it. And I've seen that so many times in different ways. Like, we've had people that play a town fool. We've had people that are like the mount salesman, guys who are like the giga fishermen on the server. And like, it's neat to see that kind of diversity in play where it actually matters to your gameplay, and you can have meaning inside of the game systems.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what people have been waiting for an MMO. And like, people have hoped that, you know, Lost Ark would be that game. They hope that Throne of Liberty would be the game, or New World.
Dude, I did too.
Well, I mean,
I've got 1,000 hours in New World. I've got almost 1,000 hours in Lost Ark. Like, I love those games.
Me too. Me too.
They just weren't what I wanted them to be at the end. And then I got into this, and I was like, hey, here we go again. And I was like, no, this is great. Like, I'm in, right? And I've just been having a blast with it.
Well, that's awesome,
cool.
Man. Yeah,
look at this. Tanks can do this, by the way.
It's like in Final Fantasy. I think warriors do the same thing. Limit Break 3.
Yeah, they throw. This is like one of their cooldowns, and we use it all the time when we're fighting caravans, because the caravan's trying to escape.
Yeah, that's
just
so
like,
badass.
Nope. Just drop a wall in front of them.
Oh, so like it's an interactable wall. It's not just like an animation.
Oh no, it's fully collision. Like, you can't go through that. Okay. Yeah, it's hilarious, dude. You can climb on it and everything. It's awesome.
Oh god, I'm gonna have to start playing again. I'm gonna have have to level up to 5 or 10 off stream, and then maybe try to get into it, man. Yeah, I mean,
as a mayor, this is kind of the stuff that I have to do here, by the way. If you haven't seen this UI, I don't know if you have yet.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't even know if I'd want to be a mayor. Like, I've seen some of the I was a guild leader for many years, and it's like, oh man, it's great to have somebody else just do everything.
So one of the things I can do with this is, if you look at this, I'm the guy creating quests for people. So I can choose which ones we want them to do. and I'm like, hey, I want everybody to go kill skeletons. We pay 5 gold from the node, and then they get this quest, and everyone gets that available to them.
Do they function?
It's just fun.
Does this functions the exact same way as the what was it, guild or like the town boards in New World? Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm going.
But as the mayor, I'm selecting which quests they get. And then also you can do another one for the crafters. If you look over here, this is like we do a buyback order and then or a buy order. And it's like we need to produce quality weapons so we can upgrade one of our buildings for the whole server. And in order to produce that, I need you guys to turn in these materials. So we put up a buy order. They go and send those items in and they get the material back out. They get node currency and they can buy upgrades and shit with that. And like this is pretty bare bones right now.
Yeah.
But the next upgrade we're doing is animal husbandry to do the next tier up of mounts.
Oh, the mounts.
And like...
That's wild.
So then the server can produce them. Yep. Yeah. But since they're producing it in our town, we get the tax money, and I can't steal that as a mayor. So there's no like bullshit from a mayor stealing it. It goes into our node. Our node is very rich. We can apply. We can do things with it.
Right.
And we always have commissions running because of that, because they cost gold. So like these types of systems are really compelling, and that's the stuff you get to do as a mayor.
Yeah.
In payment back, you get the flying mount, and like that's basically how that goes.
So it's like in a way, like I mean, that's part of like you have your own profession as being a mayor, right? That's like its own meta game in itself.
Oh yeah. And I have spreadsheets for everything. I have to sit down and figure out what resources are available on this server, where everybody else's progression is, what is even possible for us to do, and then we work out the plan for the week, and then I put all those buy orders and everything up, so they're all just kind of set up that way.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
It is work, but I love that because I played Eve, right?
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I was a guild leader for many years. I don't know if I'd be willing to do it again, but man, it was a lot of work. But it's rewarding too, because the flying mount does look really fucking cool.
I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most is the node variety for mayors, because like right now everybody just votes for it.
Yeah.
Right. You just vote to see who's the biggest mayor or whatever. But they've got these other ones going in. Like scientific is how that works. But they've got one like divine nodes where you have to be like doing pious quests, and whoever does that is like the most divine. And then the martial nodes are like you PvP for it. So whoever's the most badass in PvP becomes the mayor. Yeah. And then the economic node is you buy it with gold. So whoever's like the trade baron becomes the mayor. And I'm interested in seeing how those play out, because it means that a streamer like me can't just win.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
To be real, in a scientific note, I'm just going to win. We vote. We have more people voting for me. That's how that's always going to go.
Everybody vote for me, and then I'm the mayor now. Yep. Great game.
And I love that there are other varieties of leadership that stop streamer privilege from allowing that, even though I have that. I love to see that is
well, it's good to have one with streamer privilege too, right? That's just a straight up vote, because it's like every type of gameplay is valid, and that's what makes MMOs special. That's what I think people want, is like a living, breathing world that has texture and actual like variety to it, rather than everything being like this uniform theme park experience that's hyper defined. You're on rails, you can't go off them.
Yeah, I always feel like theme park MMOs, they start off kind of broad. You have a lot of options available to you. And then as you get closer to the end game, it just thins out until you have one lane of content left. And then social sandbox MMOs work in exactly the reverse. You start off with not being able to do anything. Nobody knows you. You have no name to you. And then by the end of the game, you're like, you can be very well known. You have a ton of options available to you, and it just keeps expanding outwards, which makes it, it just makes it super compelling for me. That's why I like things more. And I've just been a fan of them ever since. I think the only one I bounced off was Albion, because I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah, that game it's still really popular. It's got like such a strong audience, but I never really played it myself either.
Yeah, I got into it a little bit, and then I was like, I could just be playing Eve, and then now I've quit Eve. So
I think a lot of people have. I feel like that game's kind of fallen off just for different various reasons.
It's just too much pay to win. I think that was the biggest thing for me when they introduced what are called skill injectors. You could just buy experience for your character with real money, and I was like, dude, I'm out. Like, I just can't do this anymore. And like,
weird game.
With this having the promise of no pay to win, I think if they ever introduced pay to win in this, they'd lose everything.
Yeah,
and they know that. And I think
it's true.
Even things like WoW selling like the $90 mount and shit like that have been really a big turnoff for me.
It's
so
weird.
Seeing the way that they're it's weird, and it sucks because it feels like you're buying status, you're buying power in that way, even if it's just a mount, right? Because everyone looks at the mount, they're like, look at that thing. And with this, they're selling skins for the mount. So like mounts have speed on them. And like you have to breed a good mount if you're going to move. Like this one has 140% speed.
Sure.
But if you have a shitty mount, you're slow. And you would be like, oh, I'll just buy a mount off the store, right? But no, they're selling a skin. So you can't even buy a faster mount. You buy your mount, but looking different, which I was like, okay, man, you got me with that. That's great.
It's just
you
like,
can't even buy power that way.
I mean, they've got to make money somehow, right? And like, I get it. And if they're going to do something like that, I would much rather that than a lot of the other alternatives.
Yep.
So yeah,
I agree.
I totally agree.
I super agree. And I think that's the thing with me, man, is like, I have felt, I guess the basic way to do it is, as a developer, I understand where they're at.
Yeah.
As a player, I feel like my purchase was respected and that my time is respected. And I feel like the game is compelling for me systems-wise. So, like, for me, it's a perfect storm of positivity here.
Yeah, I feel like that's the dream, right? I just really hope it happens. And it's sad to see people that are skeptical or negative, but I think that's what's going to happen with any game. But I just hope you know, I mean, again, take a break for a year or two if people feel that way and come back and it'll still be there.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy it, man. Yeah. And I hope you're able to get into it. I saw what happened to you when you first started. By the way, you can't
really fun time.
You can't PvP people in that zone now. They've got the flags.
Steven told me. Yeah. It's just like, yeah, he's like, yeah, this is a very big problem. Okay. Yeah. No, I will probably try it out and maybe play a little bit myself. Because like after all this conversation and everything about it, and I've been watching you play and other people, it's like, it actually looks pretty good. And so, yeah, maybe I'll have to try it out.
Oh, man.
But yeah, oh, go ahead.
Have you seen the actual talent trees yet?
I'm looking at them right now. You're showing me.
All the weapons have a talent tree.
Oh, yes. I did see that. Yeah, I remember when they announced that, and I just went crazy. It's like, are you kidding me? It's amazing.
Yeah, dude, like, I'm a mage wielding a spell bow, which is already, like, I've never seen that with a mage. Like, you're actually casting through a bow, which is wild.
Like Dragon's Dogma, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, like very much so, and it actually adds magical pens. So like the enemy's MR is dropped based on me having a bow on, and it's just a weird iconic look.
Yeah,
right? It's pretty rad.
Yeah, no,
so I've been really liking that,
especially the way that people can make their own classes and like define the way that they're going to play. I think that's a huge component.
Yeah, we don't have subclasses yet, and I'm really waiting for that. And like, I just keep memeing about it because I'm like, mage is the best class, so I'm just gonna go mage, like archmage or like wizard or something. Yeah, exactly. I'm excited for it. But there's the other one that I was really interested in is a summoner in May, like phase 3 when they said that, and they have summoner tank, which is like a broodmancer or brood warden, and you cover yourself in beetles for armor, which is insane.
Oh my god.
So like just weird shit. Right?
Yeah.
So like I'm interested to see how they play that out, because so far the classes have been very compelling and they work well together. Not like, I guess in WoW retail you kind of have this isolated lane of you just do damage and your damage is what matters and your rotation is what matters and everything outside of that kind of doesn't. There's very few crossovers between other classes.
Well, did you see what happened when they brought out augmentation of Ochre and like how much drama that caused? Because like this is exactly what you're talking about, right? How like you don't have support classes or ancillary classes. You just have each class kind of effectively being a mage, like a warlock is a mage that shoots shadow balls, and a shaman is a mage that shoots lightning balls. Is that basically kind of what you're saying? And there's like no real actual dynamic difference. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. And it's like it all comes out to just damage and they don't play off each other. Yeah. And like one of the things that I noticed really early on is you have not enough talent points to be able to pull off all of the combos and not enough cast speed to pull off a perfect combo either. So you have to work with others. So in this case, I can freeze an enemy using Frostbolt on it and then Cone of Cold, which advances chilled into frozen. If an enemy is frozen and gets hit with your lightning, you shatter it and do bonus damage. So what we'll do is we'll rotate between the different mages of who's applying the frost right now. I'll hit with my lightning, I'll hit with my frost, you hit with your lightning, and you're playing off of each other all the time. But also fighters play off that. So when an enemy is frozen, the fighters can do an extra thing. When an enemy is burning, a cleric can actually combust them. So you play off of so many different classes that it's not even about your personal performance. It's about everyone working together and communicating, which I'm really liking that because it reminds me of Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 combat.
It's so weird for me because like coming from somebody who used to be like a massive like parsing, like I used to try to do like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to get the highest parse in like this WoW fight or something. And I've kind of changed my stance on it to where now I'm actually kind of glad that they're not doing damage meters. Because like people can actually focus on like their input and the way that they enhance the experience of the group rather than trying to like assign a value to it and then say, well, because my number is bigger than yours, I'm a better player. because like, I mean, you've
remember a better person, dude.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you've rated, and like, you know, that the person who's sometimes doing the annoying job, this person is doing more work than everybody else. Like, you know, in classic WoW, like Razor Gore, like moving the boss around and killing all the eggs, like that's a separate job, but you're not going to be on the meter for it. And it like creates a level of gameplay. And once you have that meter though, it totally contrives the way that people value everything.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like I'm playing a mage in Hardcore Classic, and I'm going to be the winner's chill mage. So my DPS is just going to be less, but everyone else's is more because of me. Right. You know? And like, I love those types of interactions, and this has probably the most that I've seen from a combat system in a while. And I actually have leveled up my mage to the max, and I started leveling a ranger today. I was just blown away by it. It's fun as hell.
Oh,
so yeah.
All right. I gotta play it. All right.
He's gonna love fire. Man.
Yeah, you got me.
He's gonna play a fighter, and he's gonna.
And the thing is like for anybody on the fence about it, dude, maybe it sucks in the end. Right? Maybe it doesn't suck in the end. But right now, this shit is really fun. Oh, and like, I can't ask more than that.
Yeah, right? I hate the idea. Like, oh, what if it's bad in 3 years? I don't know. I'll deal with it in 3 years. Yeah, I'll think about it.
In 3 years, if it sucks, then it'll suck in 3 years.
Yeah,
right now, it's great.
Imagine only having fun for 3 years. Yeah. But yeah, exactly, man. Anyway, I do really appreciate you coming on and talk about it. I promised everybody I'd play Balatro today, so I'm gonna probably go do that just a little bit. Yeah, it'll be my first time. Yeah, but yeah, thanks a lot for coming on and talking about it. And if I do log in, I will absolutely let you know.
All right. Yeah, rock on, dude. And I hope you have fun in Balatro. That game kicks ass. It's rad.
All right, awesome, man. I'll see you later.
All right, see ya.
Peace.